it down the hole. Inside down the hole.
We've been summoned to sit.
All right, we're all in here. There's Susan.
Yeah, she's over there. Thank you.
Oh my goodness. You have to be strong.
Look at that. Very cool tricks.
You already got your
How are you, sir? I'm well. You're my favorite guy. Absolutely. How you doing? How are you doing? I'm doing all right, too. You guys come over. Oh, yeah. Excellent. We'll chat. We'll bring the music. Yeah, yeah.
Make sure they're either on vibrate or turned off totally.
We ask if everyone could please turn off their cell phones. So we all gathered today for an important, sad, and bittersweet event. To say thank you, to say we appreciate you, to say goodbye, in a sense, to our beloved Lil. For some people, she was just Lil. Maybe for some people, she was Leona. For some people, she was Aunt Lil, Grandma Lil. She was anybody, but she would say, "Don't call me Bubby, and don't call me Mother." She was a very dear person, full of independence, full of fire, full of energy, full of spirit, full of good wishes and caring for people, full of appreciation and love for her friends and her family. A lady who we will miss very much, but who left a beautiful, special imprint in this world. All of us who knew her will certainly not forget her. Whether it's the things she said, the things she did, the things she lived her life, they were so strong that they're really emblazoned on our consciousness, on our spirits, and our soul. So this is for you today. We share words on your behalf. In the Jewish tradition, we have a funeral service, not just because of the people here to hear the words, but because of the person who's passed away. We want her to hear how much we appreciated her. We want her to hear that we remembered all the stories, remembered all the things she did, and we hope that those things will give her eternal comfort in her next world. We're now going to share a section of the Psalms, the familiar Psalm 23. I'll first say in Hebrew, and then I will say in English with you. Mizmor LeDavid, Adonai roi lo iksar, B'nai steshech yarbitzeni, al memenuchos yenach leini. Nafshi yeshovev yancheni v'maglei tzedek laman shemo. Gam ki elech begeit salmaves lo yirara ki ata imadi. Shivtecha umishantecha hema yenachamoni. Tarach lefanei shulchan neged sayrai. Dishante v'shemen roshi kosi revaya. Aktov v'chesed yirdafuni kol yemei chayai. V'shavti bebeis Adonai le'orech yamim. A Psalm of David. God is my shepherd, I shall not lack. In lush meadows he lays me down, beside tranquil waters he leads me. He restores my soul. He leads me on paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Though I walk in the valley overshadowed by death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table for me in the full view of my torments. You anointed my head with oil. My cup overflows. May only goodness and kindness pursue me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord for many long days. One of the customs for the Jewish funeral service is a selection called the Woman of Valor, or Eshet Chayil in Hebrew. It was written many thousands of years ago, and so we had a big question: would it be suitable for such a contemporary modern lady such as Lil? So we scrutinized the verses, and we found them to be all fitting. So, there was one little thing maybe we weren't sure about, but despite it being so old and so classical, we still feel that the words perfectly fit Lil, and she would approve. So we will proceed with the Jewish tradition. So we say in Hebrew, Eish es chayil mi yimsa, beirachach mipnini mechra, ba'atach ba'alev bala, be'shala de'aksar, gemalsu tov v'lora, kol yemei chayecha, darsher tzemru fishtim, betas bechapitz kapecha. Haisa kinio socher, mi merchak tavi lachma, betakam ba'od laila, bitidin teref, levesa lachok narasecha. Zamama sadeh v'tikachechu, mi pri kapecha natu karim. Hagra ba'oz masnecha, betametz roasecha. Tama ki tov sachra, lo yichbe b'layla neira. Yedecha shilcha v'kishor, b'kapecha samchu faleh. Sheker achein v'hevel hayofi, isha yiras ha'adonai tis halal. Tenu la mi pri yadecha, v'halucha b'sharim ma'asecha. An accomplished woman who can find far beyond pearls is her value. Her husband's heart relies on her, and he shall lack no fortune. She repays his good, but never his harm, all the days of her life. She seeks out wool and linen, and her hands work willingly. She is like a merchant ship. From afar she brings sustenance. She rises as well as nighttime, and gives food to her household. She envisions a field and buys it. From the fruit of her handiwork she plants a vineyard. With strength she girds her loins, and invigorates her arms. She spreads out her palm to the poor, and extends her hands to the destitute. She fears not snow for her household. Her entire household is clothed with scarlet wool. She makes a cloak to sell, and delivers a belt to the peddler. Strength and majesty are her raiment. She joyfully awaits the last day. She opens her mouth with wisdom, and a lesson of kindness is on her tongue. She anticipates the needs of her household, and partakes not of the bread of laziness. Her children arise, and they praise her. Her husband, he lauds her. Many daughters have amassed achievement, but you have surpassed them all. False is grace, and vain is beauty. A God-fearing woman, she should be praised. Give her the fruits of her hands, and let her be praised in the gates by her very own deeds. I had a chance to see Lil as a resident of Stone Gardens for many years. I saw a strong, independent woman who got through all her various challenges, who came to programs and took part of our life on the campus with a lot of joy and a lot of tenacity. And I saw a lot of the staff members really cared for her. They really appreciated her. They respected her. And they even went to her for her guidance and her suggestions and her reassurances that everything would be okay. What I wanted to share with you today, though, is a number of stories and just bits and pieces of important information that we put together as a family, that we all gathered around to discuss. So you'll hear from me more of the biographical, more of the stories of Lil's life, and then you'll be blessed to hear from some of her children and some more family as well later on in the service. And we'll even open up to you if you might have a few words that you would like to share as well. So Lil was born in the Bronx. She was a child of immigrant parents to Hyman and Celia. They spoke Yiddish, and they were Jewish immigrants from Bessarabia, which is a part of Europe, sort of near Ukraine. She had 3 brothers, Frank of blessed memory, as well as Phil, and with Harry. They were all so protective of her. All the boys, wherever she went, they wanted to make sure that she was okay. She had her protection 24/7. But sadly, her brother Frank would pass away later, in combat, in service to his country during World War II. Lil graduated from high school, and she worked of all places in the stock market. You can imagine her with her dresses and her heels, calling out transactions and recording things in the fast-paced environment of the New York Stock Exchange. But one of the highlights of her life wasn't just the career, wasn't just the work, but it was the love story of the century. I think this is a family story probably everyone knows here, but you can tell it over and over again, and it'll never get boring. The story begins with a gentleman named Stan, who was he was home on leave from his service in the military. He came to Cleveland with a cousin, and what do you do when you're back home? You go out on some dates. You make a blind date. And so a blind date was set up with the two of them, and it was supposed to be between Lil's good friend Sylvia and herself. And the original setup was that it would not be the typical thing that you would think. It would be that Stan would go with Sylvia, and Lil would get the cousin, and whatever. But at the last minute, Sylvia had to cancel, and things got switched. And in heaven, things worked out so perfectly that Stan would be with Lil on her special date. And he was due to ship out the next day, and they were with each other for less than 24 hours. And they all would say that it was perfectly love at sight, and they knew exactly that it would be like this forever and ever. Stan left the next day. He would write her letters all the time. They would constantly communicate with each other. And then many months later, Stan was able to return from a tour in Africa, and he would only be home a short while. And then they had to make a big decision. Do they get married, or do they wait a little longer? And so it was a Friday afternoon. Everything was closing. Things were happening very fast. She quickly rented a gown, got married in the courtroom, but they still wanted a Jewish service. And there's no rabbis hanging around in the street at 5 o'clock, who knows what time it was, 6 o'clock, late in the day on Friday. So they found out the butcher's son was available, and he was a rabbi. He might have been a butcher, mashkiach rabbi, but he was good enough as a rabbi. So he was the one who conducted the marriage ceremony. They broke the glass, and they were married in a most special, very auspicious way. He was off to war again, and who knows if they thought that they would see each other again. Things did not seem to be going so well. He was headed towards the Pacific, and the Pacific front was not looking too good. But all of a sudden, she got a telegram. The war is over. I'm coming home now. And of course, all of that happened because the United States made the decision to bomb Japan, and the course of the war changed dramatically. But that was how their beautiful relationship began, through a very amazing, providential circumstance. After they got settled, they moved to Cleveland, and they had their 3 children, Sue, Frank, and Lori. He became a bricklayer in the big up-and-coming building of homes situation going on there, and she worked in her retail position. Her main focus was the babies, the homemaking, and making sure that everyone was happy and safe and secure. At first, they lived in the city of Cleveland, in the Kinsman neighborhood by Lee and Kinsman, and later on, when the neighborhood changed, they moved to their home in South Euclid. Everything was going beautifully, but very sadly, her love of her life, her dear Stan, passed away at age 46 from cancer that came on suddenly. The kids would grow up and start to move out of the house, and then finally, she had a second opportunity for love in a very special way. And again, it wasn't a boring story. It was a very special situation of how the two of them were put together. So of course we had Lil and Stan, and they happened to have their close friends, Nate and Lynn Nathanson. And at the time, Lynn knew that she was very sick, that she had a very serious diagnosis. She wasn't sure what would happen, but she had a feeling that her husband would be lonely. And she knew at the same time that her friend Lil, would also be lonely as well. And so fate would have it that the two of them were blessed, and that they got together ultimately to be husband and wife, and to try to make it work, to try to make a happy life a second time. And truly it was a merger of 3 kids and 2 kids. Bunny and Sheila came into life, and together it was 5 children that Lil proudly had, her 5 beautiful children that she had. She had many challenges in her life, of course, and she was about to have another one with her son Frank, of course, passing away as well shortly after this time. Nate and Lil were close companions. They went everywhere together. They did everything together. Yes, they fought sometimes. They didn't always agree on everything. But that didn't change the fact that they were the yin and the yang. They were the together couple. They did everything that they could for one another. And it really showed that when the time came, and Nate himself was very sick, he had a very serious brain tumor. He couldn't do a lot of things. But who was it who didn't sleep? Who was with him every waking moment as his caregiver? And Lil was. Until he passed away, until he was 72 years old, he was with her, and she was with him. And she would always say that it wasn't enough years It wasn't enough years with my first husband, and it wasn't enough years with my second. The family, I guess, are good at calculating years, and they said that even though Lil had 2 marriages, had 2 husbands, she really was by herself longer than she was together. And this meant that she had to be her true self. She had to be strong. She had to be independent. She had to figure out how to do things her way. Even though people might have thought, oh, she should slow down, life was hard, she lost her husbands, didn't change the way she looked at having a social life. She was very into having a very active social life. All kinds of friends, always going places, always doing things. She in fact drove her car, I guess quite well, hopefully. Up until her late 80s, she was on the road. She didn't have just a regular job. She was a very busy dental assistant with Dr. Kosov, and she worked there for more than 20 years. She not only ran the front desk, made sure the office worked correctly, but she was a dental assistant. She worked hand in hand with the dentist in people's mouths, doing stuff that she knew how to do. She always kept busy, and when she wasn't busy with her family, which she loved, and her job, which she loved, she was helping different volunteer causes throughout Cleveland. She was very involved in the Hebrew Benevolent Society. She was the head of that organization. She was also very involved in the Jewish War Veterans Auxiliary, of course, through the connection of her family to the service. She worked at the Montefiore gift shop as well. And when she wasn't busy, she would even cut people's hair because she felt they would look a little better with a trim in her mind's eye. And of course, with this busy schedule, she definitely made time for her own hair and her own nails, no matter what. And if she was tired from the week and felt like, I need a break, it's been a long week, not her. Friday night was time for poker. So that's when the gals came over and they played poker. And I understand that in those days, a lot of people played for chips, they played for fake, they played for fun. But in her house, it was real smoke and real money. So that should tell her about you. And, and the picture of her playing her poker wasn't just a lady in a house robe. She had her jewelry, she had her furs, and I learned from the family for the first time what a cocktail ring is, which is a ring that's probably too heavy. You can barely lift it, but you put it on your finger anyways, and it just looks kind of big and it looks good, and it definitely suited her style. So the thing about her was, again, that she was so independent and so strong. And we'll hear soon from her daughters, who will share with you her many words of wisdom. But the theme of her life was, you've got to be with everybody, take care of everybody, but be ready to do it yourself. If you go on a date with a boy, make sure you have your own money and your own way of getting home, because you never know how it'll work out. And she had a unique way of balancing things. She could be a very tough household person, a tough mother, a tough wife, a lot of rules, a lot of things that had to be one way, which is her way. But at the same time, what was amazing about her was that when she saw you and the decisions you might have made, people made life decisions, people picked partners, people made career decisions, she didn't judge them. She didn't say there's a right way or a wrong way. She just loved you and smiled, and she just wished the best for you and hoped that you would be happy and successful. It didn't matter if it was her way or anyone else's way. And the last thing maybe that we'll think about her was just how she expressed her love. She expressed her love in many ways, but thank goodness she had the Jewish cooking love situation, right? She showed her love to people by how she cooked and how she fed you. It didn't matter that her kids were not hungry. It didn't matter her grandkids had just eaten. You showed up at her house, you needed to eat because that was your duty. And she always had a pot of matzo ball soup on the stove. She always had her delicious Russian tea biscuits, which were something that were her famous trademark, the chopped liver, the noodle kugel, all kinds of things. Many things were in her love language, but thank goodness that included food. So I don't want to go on and on. There's so much to say about her, but clearly she left us with a beautiful, rich heritage, a heritage of strength, independence, love, and caring, and dedication to her friends and family. And even when life got tough and life was difficult, she didn't get sad, she didn't cry, she didn't bemoan. She just went forward and made sure she had a good time as much as she could. One of the people that her greatest fans and in the best position to share about her life and talk about her special qualities are her children. So I'm going to now call upon her daughter, Laura.
Okay, so our mom, even short of stature, was a force of nature. She was a daughter, sister, wife, mother, stepmother, sister-in-law, aunt, grandmother, and great-grandmother. I embraced every proper noun proudly. She was a rule follower. Sorry, Chris, that's where I get it from. But had her own way of doing things. And I think it's important that her Lilisms are carried on through all of us. So we're going to go through a couple of those that I think all of you know, particularly the last one. And I think at the time she said this, she really didn't always know some of the meanings behind it. So, first one she always said to me was, reach high and you'll get high. A little bit different now. This one's for Cookie. Sit up straight, get your boobies off the table. Another really good one. For my daughter, be fussy when you choose a partner. Always be fussy. Wendy, good morning. Take your hands off your hips after a sleepover every morning. Don't hock me a Chinik. Said that all the time to us. From your lips to God's ears. Shitter, get off the pot. Another one she loved. And everybody's favorite. Mom, where is? It is in my pocket. Our mom loved so hard. And she never really understood why other people didn't love as hard as she did. It didn't ever make any sense to her. She lived her life the way that she wanted to live. It wasn't always her choice in so many situations, but she was so pragmatic. It was grieve and move on. Let's just move on with our lives. But the love she had for her family never wavered. No matter how old she got, no matter how often or not often your phone calls were, the phone call always ended with, I love you and love to your family. I know that when I need advice now, she'll be there for me, along with my dad, who she is now thankfully reunited with. We love you, Mom. Sorry for the words.
I didn't hear any bad words. So now we call upon Sue and Bob to share a few words.
Thanks to everyone for coming. It's so nice of you. I'm happy to see you all. Yeah, Mom was pretty great. This whole, what we're going to talk about was all his idea, of course, and I stole it, and I said I want to help too. We didn't always see eye to eye, and we often bumped heads, particularly when I was a teenager. Some of you may remember those days. But I always knew I was loved, and no matter what I did, I could come home whenever I needed to. We were lucky that I consider myself very lucky that my mother lived long enough to know not only my children, but my grandchildren. So I never had that luxury in my own family. So that was such a blessing. And most of the kids are old enough that they will remember her, which I think is amazing. So in Mom's 100-plus years, she lived through lots of events. This is Bob's idea here, because there was a lot going on over those 100 years. So in the year of her birth, I'll start it off, the president was Warren Harding. King Tut's tomb was opened. The first issue of Time magazine came out. The first brain tumor operation took place. Insulin began being used for treating diabetes. A prohibition was revoked, and women wearing trousers was legalized. Thank heavens for that one. And Disney Studios opened.
Just so you know how long she lived, there were 18 presidents in her lifetime. Harding, Coolidge, Hoover, Roosevelt, Truman, Eisenhower, Kennedy, Johnson, Nixon, Ford, Carter, Reagan, Bush Sr., Clinton, Bush Jr., Obama, Trump, Biden.
18, that's a lot. The inventions that came about during her lifetime: the aerosol spray can, the blender, the pop-up toaster, the electric can opener, television, chainsaws, guys like that, electric razors, binoculars, the Polaroid camera, sunglasses, the lie detector, the jet engine, and the helicopter for Lori.
In her first 20 years, these are the major events. And when she was 1, Lenin died and Stalin took over Russia. When she was 4, Lindbergh made the first non-stop flight across the Atlantic. Also, when she was 4, the first motion picture with sound was in the theaters called The Jazz Singer. When she was 6, Wall Street crashed, started the Great Depression. When she was 9, the Empire State Building was just finished being constructed. When she was 16, World War II started. When she was 18, Pearl Harbor was attacked and the U.S. entered the war.
So during the years she was married to my dad, to our dad, World War II ended shortly after their marriage in 1945. I was born and was part of the baby boom. Frankie was born the year the Korean conflict started. Lori was born when Elvis Presley signed his first recording contract. You'll be happy to hear. In 1948 was the birth of Israel. The Berlin Wall was built. The Cuban Missile Crisis took place. JFK was assassinated in Dallas. There was civil rights unrest. The U.S. sent troops to Vietnam, plunging them into that war. And then, unfortunately, in 1967, our dad died of pancreatic cancer, and Mom was widowed.
When she was 45, Martin Luther King was assassinated. This is the period she was married to Nate. I was getting to that.
Oh, sorry. I think that's important.
46, the U.S. lands Neil Armstrong on the moon. When she was 47, she married Nate Nathanson and acquired 2 more daughters. When she was 50, Roe versus Wade Supreme Court decision came out. When she was 54, was the beginning of desktop computers. 55, first grandchild. 58, the HIV/AIDS epidemic killed 35 million people. When she was 60, the internet was created. When she was 66, the Berlin Wall came down. At 72, she was widowed one more time. Nate passed away.
Other events that she saw in her lifetime, Google was born. The International Space Center was opened. The World Trade Center towers were attacked. Sad event. The birth of Facebook, which she cared nothing about at all. Her first grandchild was born in 2007 when she was 84, great-grandchild when she was 84 years old. And the first iPhone was launched that same year, which she also cared nothing about. And then in 2020, the COVID epidemic swept the world. We're going to miss our mom, and we hope that she's being reunited right now with her 2 husbands that she loved dearly, and with our brother, and with all the family and friends that went before her. Thank you.
Sue reassured me there wouldn't be an exam to go to the next phase of the class. But it gives an amazing perspective of all the things that she got through. So now it's my pleasure to call upon her dear niece, Eva, who will share a few words.
Hi, I'm Cookie Friedson's daughter. So Lil is my great aunt. Growing up, our regular trips to Cleveland always meant a stop by Lil's house, which was always good news for me and my 3 sisters because Lil always had presents. Gifts, like not just normal gifts. We thought these gifts were amazing. And it was probably 15 years later, we realized that these gifts were probably things she just had lying around her house and she wanted to get rid of them. But to us, these were like golden. And I just wanted to share a few examples of some of the things that she gave us over the years. So my personal favorite was she gave my sister Digi a day of the week pill sorter. So one of those pill boxes that has like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday on it. We thought it was a jewelry box. So my sister used it to organize her earrings, like she'd lay out what earrings she was going to wear for the week. She did this for probably 10 years. We loved it. She gave us a promotional Tropicana radio that looked like an orange with a straw in it. So the orange was the radio and the straw was the antenna. We thought that was so cool. She gave me a pair of miniature wooden clogs that were about this big, that were on my dresser, like with all my most prized possessions. And we also heard that my cousin Josh got a really cool miniature handheld paper shredder. So these are all things that we love dearly. And while it may seem silly, looking back on it, isn't it so sweet to think of someone saying, Cookie's kids are coming over, what's something that they like, what's something that they could play with? It's little things that count, and these small acts of kindness really show the warmth and sweetness that Lil always exuded. So I just want to share that little story.
Thank you so much. So this were a very formal service. We would just finish things up here and conclude it. But the family wanted, just in case someone wanted to speak, we have an open mic. So if you have a quick story, little thing you want to share about Lil, now's your opportunity. No pressure. Okay. All right.
Sorry to steal your thunder. Hello, I am Lil's youngest granddaughter, and I'm the one who probably didn't do things in the traditional way of like getting married, have a kid, do a house, and she kind of let me know it wasn't her favorite thing, but she was also 99 when I got pregnant with Shelby. And so she always said, okay, well, with your husband, right? And I was like, no, Grandma, I'm not married yet or engaged. And she told me very seriously, well, that's ass backwards. And I just thought it was funny because my grandma never swore around me. But anyways, sorry, Grandma, but it is what it is. Love you.
So maybe in lieu of people speaking, maybe we'll just take just 30 seconds just to quietly think about what it is that she did for you, how she touched you, and if you were up here, what you would say, but you don't have to say it.
Mommy, did you want to say something?
Oops. Okay, so we have Tommy. You get quite an introduction, so it's all yours.
I'm a great nephew of Lil. Just two of my first restaurant jobs. She was at the restaurant, and we both recognized each other. The first time, we couldn't really put the names together, but the second time we did, and, just having that familiar face in the restaurant was wonderful. And, she was with a large table of other older ladies, and I got to see a bit of that social life that was mentioned before, so.
Thank you so much. Yes, please. Who are you?
Hi, I'm Sheila. I'm Lil's niece.
Oh, Sheila, Lil's niece will speak.
Hi, Sheila, Lil's niece. So when my dad passed away, Aunt Lil lived maybe a 5-minute walk, and when we got back to our house, Aunt Lil was at the door with pot roast. She had dinner for us, and then she whipped out a pen and paper and started taking notes. Who's bringing what? When are we going to have meals in? And she was a godsend, and she just took care of everything, and we really, really appreciate it. So we're going to really miss you, Aunt Lil. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, so just some brief announcements. We're going to conclude the service in just a moment. We're all going to go in procession to Mount Olive Cemetery in Solon. Processions sometimes can take a little longer than you would expect. You have to just go slow and drive carefully. Everyone should have their flags and their lights on. What we're going to do is we're going to stand up in just a moment. We're going to recite the Mourner's Kaddish, which is a very special Jewish prayer said at a funeral. And after the completion of the Mourner's Kaddish, what we will do is have the pallbearers come forward. The pallbearers will escort Lil in the casket. And then the family, who's in the family room, they will file in behind the casket and they'll start to walk out the door. And there's a custom of accompanying the deceased. The reason why we have the procession, the reason why we'll have the pallbearers and the family walking behind is just a mitzvah of honoring the deceased. And we'll walk out the door, and then after the family comes past the middle aisle, everyone else will start to file in behind the casket, and we're going to go out the back, where we're going to go to our cars and to do the procession. If anyone would be so inclined to make a donation, they certainly do not have to. But the family made a suggestion that one could make a donation to the American Cancer Society. And we just take a moment also, in the Jewish tradition of acknowledging the mourners and also of wishing them our comforts, to say a particular blessing and to the mourners. And, excuse me 1 second. So in particular, we say to Sue and to Laura, to Sheila, to Bunny, and also in particular to Bunny on the passing of her recent husband, Jerry. So our condolences to you as well. And we also say to all the children and the grandchildren, and the great-grandchildren, our sincerest sympathies and our comforts. And in the Jewish tradition, we say, Hamakum inachem etchem b'tok sha'ar veli Tzion v'Yerushalayim. May the omnipresent comfort you among all the mourners of Zion and Jerusalem. So at this moment, if we could please stand, we're going to stay in place. We're going to say the Kaddish. And then, like I said, we're going to follow that with the pallbearers and the escorting of the casket. Join us in the recitation of the
I have a pallbearers, please.
I think they went out the back.
They went out the back.
The family's going to follow the casket just behind, and we're going to exit through the back.
This completes our service. On behalf of the family, we thank you for attending. If you are going to the cemetery, you can park on this side, enter from the rear of the chapel. if for some reason they told you to park over here on this side, you can go right through the lobby. Thank you again.